Hi, Kino. How are you?
Hey.
What? You normally do this is the Finding Harmony you at
right.
least do that.
All right, I'll do that one.
You throw me off.
Okay.
Hi, welcome to the Fighting Harmony podcast.
Hey, Harmony.
Use your contralto.
Use my voice.
Use your real intro voice. You do a real voice.
Okay. Hi, welcome to the Fighting Harmony podcast. I'm here with Russell and someone who needs no introduction.
I guess we have like a Miami native on the show. This is maybe our third Miami native. I'm so excited.
Nice.
Hi,
Well,
Kino. How are you?
Hey, Harmony. Hey, Russell. I'm good. I'm just awake from my after practice nap and feeling pretty good that I made it through practice today.
Yeah, much needed, it sounds like. You're all the way over there in India right now.
First trip here since before the pandemic.
Whoa.
Oh.
And seriously, you're waking up at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
So my alarm is set for 1:30 in the morning, and that gives me half an hour to brush my teeth, take a shower, make tea, which I never managed to finish because the time is too short. And then I do my sitting practice. So I sit from 2 to like 3:05 or 3:10. And then I have another 10 minutes before our car comes to collect my stuff and just put it in the bag and get on over to practice.
But what about like a warm-up? Like you got to be able to like move all your limbs around, do a little pigeon.
A little pigeon.
Do all your emails
she doesn't
in pigeon.
Need a warm-up.
You don't do all the little things. I had to do hours of that stuff.
To be honest with you, at that I feel I've reduced everything to during when I do the metta practice, I lie on the back with my legs up like Viparita Karani. And then I do metta practice lying down because I'm really tired. And the whole instruction with metta bhavana is like you should relax your body and be comfortable. So I do like Viparita Karani for metta for like 5 to 10 minutes after the 1 hour sit. And then I do a forward bend because I've been sitting for an hour. And then I usually do one handstand against the wall to keep the vertical axis, because that like vertical axis training is super important. So like the handstand training I've done with the few handstand trainers that I've worked with, the thing to keep the vertical line really consistent is to do, the go as close to the wall as you can and basically like fingertips against the wall. And then you just move. So I just go up for 10 breaths of protraction and retraction of the shoulders. And then I come down and I'm ready to go. And it just takes like 30 seconds. And then I'm like, get me out. And honestly, I do that here because there's so much emphasis on like flexibility. And especially with the deep back bends that we end up doing here, that I feel like I lose the strength really quickly. So I just do like one handstand against the wall to like keep the strength. And then I go and practice, but I don't do really too much because there's not enough time.
Yeah.
I would find that really frustrating. I found
you'd be up at like 11 p.m. just to like warm up for your practice.
The moment that I woke up, I was always have been overwhelmed with a feeling of anxiety about practicing. And so I found myself, really like 2.5 hours of prep, whether it was, anything you could imagine. Like third series postures, anything that I could open up my psoas, open up my shoulders, open up my hips, open up my everything. And then I always felt like right around hour 2, the anxiety was just beginning to fade.
Because you're exhausted.
And I was exhausted. And then I felt like, okay, I can go into practice and I'm not going to hurt myself and I'm going to be okay. And I felt like that there was nothing I could do about that. It was just my personality was in my own way. Does that jive at all with your experience of practice? Like, do you feel like you wake up and it's going to be okay?
I think that my sitting practice is really the benchmark of my sanity. So for me, I know that if I don't sit, I don't want to engage with public of any type, even any other human being, probably any other even being, like even an animal being. I feel like I want to not talk to anyone and get on and do my meditation. And after my meditation, I feel like whatever happens, I'll be okay. And so for me, my sitting practice is really the key. And so that's why I'm getting up early, because I know that I want to sit before I practice. I want to sit before I interact with other people. And there's a lot of interaction at the Shala, even at that really early hour. And when you're finished with practice, and there's a lot of kind of, just negotiating people's space and sharing space, and in the changing rooms and the closing area and in and out. And, so I feel like for me, it's my sitting practice. There's and then the second thing is the earlier start time. So if I had another 30, 45 minutes, I'd probably find something to do. I'd probably like do a little pigeon and lie there and like relax a little bit. Like I do my practice at home. I sit and then I do 15, 20 minutes of yin as kind of like a transition in between the world of meditation and the sort of dynamic world of Ashtanga. But I don't have the time. So I'm like, all right, paper to Karani, handstand against the wall, let's get out of here, because that's all the time I've got. And I feel like if I were to cut my meditation and do more stretches, then that wouldn't be good for my mental health. And for me, I always prioritize my mental health over, what I can or can't do physically. And I just feel like it'll be okay. And this is something that I think is kind of problematic about the way people approach the practice here, is that they think that they have to perform at 100% capacity every single day. And they think it's not going to be okay if they need to adapt a posture, modify a posture, or skip a posture one day. And there's like this kind of push to be at your best and be at this achievement. But the reality of it is that's something that many people we bring. And if we can have the courage to go and, talk to the assistants, talk to Sharad, and figure out like, well, hey, today I'm not feeling great, or to share that and think, okay, well, what's going on? And actually like open up a line of communication that's possible. And then also just to decide, look, I don't want to do, like, maybe I'm just going to do primary today, or maybe I'm going to just do everything really lightly today, and that's okay. And so I feel like if people can give themselves that permission, then I think it can kind of lessen the anxiety a little bit. Now at the Shala, I was really surprised to see that there are laminated cards on the stage at the front, and they say, "I don't need help today." That's one of the cards.
Really?
And then the second card says, "I have an injury," and then the next card says, "I'm pregnant." So, and I've seen people take the pregnancy
I'd grab
card.
that one.
Yeah, exactly. I told him, I think you should go grab the pregnancy one.
Just see what happens.
Yeah. That explains a lot.
Certainly does.
But I've seen people, like, there's a girl who has some like a wrap around her ankle. She's obviously sprained her ankle somehow. And so she gets that every day. She walks over and grabs the "I have an injury." There's someone that hurt their knee doing a pose. And so then now they're grabbing this "I have an injury" thing and putting it in front of their mat in the lead classes and the Mysore classes. And so people are aware of it. And I think that's nice that there's space for that now. Yeah. And I hope that creates a sort of more kind of relaxed atmosphere about what we can allow ourselves not to do,
I remember one time in Gokulum, you came out of the Shala and you told me something had happened. It's a really good story. I don't know if you remember it, but you had said to me, this is one of those days where all I wanted to do was do, maybe 3 sun salutations, Padmasana, and go back to bed. And I felt that way walking into the Shala, you told me. And what ended up happening was Guruji just randomly started teaching you a 5th series posture in the middle of 3rd series, because he thought it'd be really funny to show you. And it's like you do the splits, and then I think you have to reach back for your foot.
I remember that.
And it was like, this is bananas. What I liked about the story is how honest you were, or just forthright you were about, like, there are days where we don't need to do everything.
and it's interesting. I felt like that this morning, to be honest with you. I felt like, oh, this is miserable. I told Tim on the way over. Actually, we didn't say anything on the way over. We're like, we're sharing a car with Anna from San Antonio, who's hosted us a bunch of times over there and been coming here for like 10 years or so. And sometimes we chat in the morning, and all three of us were just silent in the car over there. And we were just like staring out the window. And I'm like, oh. And then I really thought, like, how am I going to do this? I had this feeling today also, like, I don't even want to do the sun salutations. I was like, I just want to bolster and like a long hold in Supta Baddha Konasana and a bath. Yeah. That's what I want
and
today.
And a bath. That'd be nice. I've been taking a lot of those, honestly.
And then I want to go back to bed. Yeah. And then I started, it was so cold this morning, and I'm like, okay, actually my body's warming up. And I'm like, okay, the muscles are warming up. And then, Chatterjee walks into the room, and I'm like, all right. And he's literally stood in front of my mat for like 20 minutes. And I was like, okay, you're giving me energy. I'm going to ride that energy. And I was like, wow, this is really helpful that you're standing there. And I was thinking that. And I was just like, okay, this is good. Like, stand there, because I'm trying, because he's standing there. And I could do so much more than I thought. And I was actually thinking how grateful I feel to have a teacher, to be in a space where I want to come. And I'm like, I'm not pushing myself beyond limits, but I'm like, oh, my body warmed up and I could do so much more than I thought. But if I was at home, I totally wouldn't have done it. And so I was really grateful in that moment. And something like that day that you're talking about in that story was like the same thing. I'm there, and then, then like suddenly that day, Patami Joyce is going to come over and start like talking to me and doing all kinds of weird things with me. And today I also had this feeling like, please, I really don't need any help with any asanas today. I would like to just be in my own circle of misery, if that's okay. I would like to just exist with what I can do and let that be enough. And I thought that was going to happen. I was even like, please let one of the assistants come over, because, when the assistants come over, then I can it's like when I have when I'm in Mysore class at home with our teachers in Miami, I'm kind of like, I'm the one that's still in control, Yeah. Especially if they're my students, then I'm like teaching them. I'm like, all right, so today we're going to hold here. So I've decided. And then I'm like training them. So I'm never fully surrendered. I'm like, oh, actually, you didn't follow the arc of the shoulder. Let's try to do that again. So it's become the teaching moment. And then with the assistants here, I'm like, this is a holiday. So we're just going to do what I can do by myself while they're standing there. And that's going to be nice. And it's going to be a holiday. And so I was like, please let me have holiday today. And absolutely not. This was not happening. And then, I have a posture that's at the end. It's also in 5th series that I just can't, I can't do it without help. And I just felt like, okay, I'm not like, I don't want help in this today. I just want to do my miserable version of it and move on with my life. And then, Chatterjee walks over immediately and is like, let's do it now. And I was like, holy crap. Okay, let's do it now.
What does it look like?
It's, I think it's called Padma Dandasana. And so it's the Chaturanga Dandasana with the lotus. So like,
where you come down and float into that.
The down is actually is not so bad. It's the getting up to go down that's actually really bad.
Right. And do you start in lotus to go up, or do you go into lotus?
You jump through, take Uplutahi, and then you're supposed to lift up into handstand and then lower down. I've never been able to figure out that lift up from Uplutahi. So I'm just so the poor man has to come over and lift me up and take me down. So I was like, I don't need you to break your back. Like, let's just skip this today. It'll be fine. I have some miserable version I can do on my own that like kind of touches the bookends of the pose. And I was like, fine. And I did that and lied down. I was like, this is fine. And you know what I mean? And I was like, I don't really need help with back bends today. Oh, you're going to stand there while I do the whole thing. Okay. All right. I guess that the assistants are not coming. And then it was fine. I was, and it's interesting that on one of these days where you really feel like, I just want to do Surya Namaskar and standing, particularly what I found is here in Mysore, on those days, if you come, that's the day that they're going to be there for you. That's the day that they're going to come and stand around your mat, and they'll just like be there. And the day that you feel like, wow, I'm kind of hot shit today. Like, look, I feel really good. Like, wow. Like they don't see you. You don't exist to them. And
it's so weird, right?
Yeah, and
India
I
that
appreciate
way.
that. Yeah. Yeah, no, you feel, oh, I did everything today. And then that's the day that like he'll come back and be like, oh, I didn't see, do again. And you can't do it again. You know? Like, that was it. It was a once in a lifetime experience, like a comet, and it's over.
I feel like one of the through lines that's coming through our conversation is this kind of motif of transformation. And it reminds me of when I first met you, like I first actually started meeting, like talking to you in India, but when I first, met you or saw you, I think at Guy's place in New York, and you had a shaved head, and you had this, astounding practice, and I was like looking over, like, who the fuck is that? And then I had heard someone mention to me in passing that you were getting like a master's degree in civil engineering or something like that.
And interdisciplinary studies, but from NYU, yeah.
Okay, but was civil engineering a part of interdisciplinary studies?
No, interdisciplinary studies allows you to take kind of an intersectional look at different topics and it allows you, what was really nice about this degree is it allows you access to all of the graduate degree programs at New York University. So you can pick and choose what's relevant to give you a truly holistic view of whatever your course of study is. And so what my degree was in, I did a combination of an anthropological, political science, and feminist studies view of the science of agriculture. So, and this allowed me to apply kind of a deconstructivist lens to the kind of epistemological bias that goes into the science of agriculture. And what you'll find in a lot of agricultural writing is a feminization of the earth and plants, and a masculinization of the sort of the means by which production is achieved. And the language begins to be very, very different depending on which type of agricultural processes are being worked in different farms. So if it's large scale commercial agriculture versus organic agriculture versus a more kind of like what's called biodynamic agriculture, then the whole language that goes into the relationship between the sort of human activity and the nature activity, it radically changes.
Wow.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you feel
and
like
I could see why I came up with the idea of like city engineering, because I was like, what is she doing? It's like, well, I mean, she's creating society.
I was also working as a journalist, and I wrote a few articles about kind of, like New York City. And so I did actually work. I wrote an article about garbage in Gotham, and I interviewed, like the head comptroller of Manhattan, who was in charge of all of the garbage. And so like I was also working as a journalist. So maybe some of the pieces that I wrote came in as well. And yeah, I mean, I thought I was gonna have a totally different like life, and then yoga kind of came in.
That's amazing.
And so there was there's this piece, and this woman that I met or was next to at Guy's place. And then I think maybe 2 years later, I was standing there talking to Petri, and to my left, I remember seeing Tim, and then I remember seeing a goddess next to Tim. And I looked at the goddess, and she was like really like a Athena, like a rippling, muscled, like Olympian. And I thought,
but a tiny one.
But I'm a visual learner, right? So I don't get things visually. I was studying painting in New York, and like, fuck me, that's Kino. That's the Kino lady.
That's the Kino lady.
And I went up and I introduced myself afterward, and it was like that. I wanted to ask you about that transformation, but I feel like there's so many of these transformations that have happened in your life. I mean, you wrote a book, Sacred Fire: My Journey into Ashtanga Yoga. Maybe that sets up what this transformation was like for you. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I never did anything physical before yoga. So I was never a dancer. I was never a gymnast. I was never anything physical. So I feel like when I started the practice, I was kind of like, maybe you'll appreciate from the artist perspective, I felt like I was really like a blank canvas. But rather than a blank canvas being like given to a master, I was like a blank canvas given to someone with absolutely no skills. And I felt like I was blind and deaf and lacked kinesthetic touch. And it was like, okay, here, now start working.
It's like
and
Plato's cave. Here we are. Okay.
Yeah. I felt like that. I felt like I have no sense of where anything is and no sense of like the whole felt sense of the body was something completely foreign to me. And I think it took me years to realize that that was really one of the benefits of the yoga asana practice, is to bring you deeper into contact with that subtlety of the felt sense of the body and all the different kind of levels of awareness and that can come in when you fully inhabit your physical form. And I think that for a long time, I just didn't know why, but I felt better after doing asana practice. And I felt, more peaceful, more whole. And particularly after my first trip to India, I really didn't know more other than I want to get back and continue the practice. I didn't think I wanted to be, I definitely didn't think I wanted to be a yoga teacher. I definitely didn't think I wanted to stop my sort of educational path. But then I came back for 6 months, and then I came back for another 6 months. And then, very soon it was like, well, you should teach. And then I just felt like I want to keep coming back as much as I can. And then, then that path just kind of sort of opened ahead of me. And I still think about potentially going back and completing a PhD, but my interests have radically changed. So, I've really, really thought about that over the last couple of years. And I still might, life's not over. You still have, half life left to go or so. And, but I think that the first thing maybe what you saw physically was kind of like the first outlines of a different body on a canvas, because I had... Yeah. I mean, like muscle development and that kind of thing. I had zero when I started the practice. I couldn't do chaturanga to save my life. I fell out of triangle pose, like trikonasana, in my first class that I ever went to. It took me a year to do a headstand. I just had no muscle development at all. So it really was just kind of like blank blob. And it felt like that when I was practicing. I was like, I'm a blob, and the blob needs to do something. So let's try. And over time, it was like, oh, the blob is differentiating. Like the blob has at least a top and a bottom now. And then slowly there's more information, more awareness, more information, more awareness. And I was never, for whatever, you might remember from many years ago, but when I started practice, there was not really a lot of technique and anatomy. There was more like mysticism. And I felt like at some moment, because I felt like my lived experience with the body was just this blob, I felt like I need some anatomical information. So I started to like really get some anatomical information, some study anatomy. And I was really familiar with the course of like being a student. So I did a lot of self-study just in terms of body awareness and figuring out like what, like, I can't activate my shoulder. So what does that involve? And so like looking up the muscles of the shoulder and figuring out what they do and what are the bones like. And I mean, I regretted that I slept through biology class in high school, because I just felt like, that seems like it'd be the one thing from high school to be useful. And that's the class I didn't really like. So I just ignored it. I thought this is useless. And then I was like, oh, I gotta figure out where subscapularis is. Wonderful.
What was it then that like brought you into the practice? Was it looking for a physical outlet, or was it...
Did a friend drag you in?
What like... What was it that attracted you?
No, I mean, well, I did my first yoga class when I was 19, and it was in a gym. It was a traditional hatha yoga class from the Shivananda tradition. So I did some hatha yoga that was just kind of really spiritual oriented, relaxation based. And so it was like, I really, really respect that lineage. I think it's a really great entry for people who have no kind of body awareness and no physical training. I think this traditional hatha practice is wonderful, especially if people are looking for deep relaxation and this sort of thing. Really, really respect this. And I, was in a radically different period of my life. So from the time I'm 18 until I start really doing dedicated Ashtanga yoga, I can look back now and I can see that I was in a period of depression. And
Oh.
I was in a period where I was searching without having the tools for searching. And that led me into, while I'm, going into, education, I'm in every spare moment, kind of like undergraduate school for me, for somehow was very non-challenging. So that allowed me to, basically excel in the undergraduate degree while at the same time having like a part-time job partying. So
Right.
I felt like I was, doing what I needed to do. And I graduated with honors. I was going to double major, but I changed my mind and did 3 minors instead. That allowed me more diversity and to explore different things. And so but then at the same time, I was living this life where it would come like Thursday through Sunday, and I would just be completely lost in another world. And it was in that atmosphere that I did my first yoga class. And at some moment, I graduated from my undergraduate degree, and I wanted to take a little bit of time off because I felt really lost. And it was during this period where I was applying to graduate schools, and I said, I want to get more deeply into yoga. And I remember thinking, the reason, the actual, like the impetus, I know exactly where it came from, because I was standing in an elevator. This is going to sound completely bizarre, but standing in an elevator on Monday morning. I hadn't been to sleep since Friday, Thursday night, actually. So then I'm standing in an elevator, and there's a guy who came in, and I'm like, I'm 21, and standing in an elevator, and there's a guy with these like tattoos of kisses all over his neck.
Yeah.
And this guy looks really gnarly, really gnarly.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit like, I'm going to an after party. I'm like an after party, because I don't have class until Tuesday, so I'm still free. And I'm standing in the elevator, and I'm looking up at this guy, and I'm like, is this really like, is this safe?
Right.
I'm by myself,
yeah, for sure.
because I know where the party is, and I know the people there, and I've like gone from one place to another. And he looks down at me, and he's like, man, I'm so glad the 80s are over. And I was like, the 80s? That was in my childhood. Like, I didn't have any problem with the 80s. Like, I'm thinking, and I immediately have all these images flash through my mind about the 80s. So I see like Michael Jackson and Madonna and Van Halen. And I'm like, I don't really have a problem with that. And he's like, man, all those 8-balls were just killing me. And I was a little bit like, my God.
Totally.
So an 8-ball, if anybody's, it's like cocaine and heroin. And I was like, okay. And then like he takes a breath, and he's like, yeah, man, this ecstasy is just so much better for the body. And I was like,
absolutely.
I need to stop this right now.
For the children at home, I agree with every comment so far.
Yeah, I just had this image in my mind. I was like, listen, I was like, okay, I like nodded him and was like, you need to get out of this party scene. You get your life back together. You are clearly on some path of deep escapism. You are not happy within yourself. This is where you are. And in 20 years, you have a choice. You're either going to be the female version of that dude, or you're going to be his girlfriend. So, which is worse? Neither. You want neither of those. You just like, get out of this. And we still went to the party. I still had a really good time. Yeah. But I also realized like there was a hollowness into, trying to find eternal happiness in the perfect house music beat. You know what I mean? Like it just, like you keep looking and the goalposts just shift, but the misery that's inside, it never leaves you, because you'll have a chemically induced kind of period of happiness, but you always come back to yourself. You always come back to the down. And so I literally said, I want to find out how to live a more peaceful life. And part of that was, I want to go to take a more serious yoga class. So I walked into an Ashtanga class. I didn't know what it was. And within I think I bought my ticket to India 6 months after my first Ashtanga class.
Wow.
And I showed up in India like 8 months into my Ashtanga journey.
Were you in New York in that first class?
My first class was in Miami, and then I was moving to New York. My first Mysore class was in New York. And I think you saw me at Guy's when I came back from Mysore for the first time. So I already been to India for 2 months. I did the 1 month after 9/11 in the Puck building, there, which was really emotional and really intense. And I actually started coming to Guy's, and maybe you'll think this is quite funny, because I was practicing on my own in my East Village apartment in Alphabet City, which this was radically different 20 years ago than it is now.
Right. You could still buy 8-balls at that point.
Exactly. And I was living in a very bizarre building. Like there were like seances happening, and like naked tarot readings. And then I would be like yoga girl. And then like people like inviting me, like, do you want to come and be a part of our naked tarot? I was like, I'm good, but have fun. next time. Yeah,
Keep my options open though. I'll keep my schedule open.
Absolutely. Naked tarot and seances. What more could you ask for out of
not much.
Apartment mates, your neighbors, right?
Yeah.
So I
But you're only like 2 or 3 blocks from Guy's place.
But I was practicing by myself, so I felt like I met my teachers. Like I had my teachers, and I had so much physical activity to be a student at NYU, because like NYU is that east-west commute. So I'm living in Alphabet City, and I was just like, all right, let's
20-minute walk back and forth.
Yeah, walk 20 minutes over here, and I walk 20 minutes back, and I'm gonna walk over here. I went to Eddie's for like a week, and I was like, I'm gonna walkathon. I can't do this, and I don't have money for cabs. There was no subway transportation. I walked there. It was like 40-minute there, 40-minute back, 20-minute there, 20-minute back. And at the end, I was like, I don't have money to feed myself for all of this. I can't. I'm gonna walk it on. So I was like, look, I already have a teacher. I'm good. I went to Eddie because he was the host at the Puck building, and I felt that's right. And then I'm like, look, he's not my teacher. Patabi Joyce was my teacher. I felt really connected with Shrad even then, and I was like, they're my teacher. We practice at home. I'm practicing at home. Then one Sunday morning, I got a fierce knock on my door. Boom, boom, boom. I was like, and I'm practicing, And I opened the door, and I got this neighbor who looked super hungover with the mascara coming out. She's like, what are you doing in here? And I'm like, I'm doing yoga. What are you doing?
The sound upset your neighbors.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm sleeping. I was like, she said she would hear her chandelier boom, boom. But I guess just jumping. The jumping. And then and she's like, classic New Yorker was like, yoga's supposed to be relaxing. Like, what is your problem? Why are you jumping? You should be relaxing. Go and relax. And then she walked away. I was like, I'm really sorry. On Sundays, I'll find someplace else to do my practice. So then that's how I started going to Guys. I was like, just once a week on Sunday, I will go and practice somewhere so that I don't see that image again.
Yeah. That's exactly when I saw you. It was on a Sunday. Yeah, it wasn't every day. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Because you get one New Yorker up in your face in the middle of your practice. It's almost like a PTSD moment. You know what I mean?
Totally. You're like, I don't need any more of that.
She was super hungover, and to be honest with you, it was a really old building, and that chandelier could have fallen off. It could have injured someone. So let it happen when no one was there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's really the moment then. I mean, you were on your way to a PhD and really going in a really very deeply academic path. And then this is it now. You went that direction, and now here you are.
An India detour that's lasted 20 some odd years.
You're in Mysore on Zoom talking to us. I mean, that's the result of that choice.
Yeah. I really never thought that I would be a teacher, to be honest with you. It wasn't really there's so many people now that come to Mysore and they're like, they want the authorization as part of their career path or something like that. And, it's like a different time. There was the authorization was kind of something relatively new. And then it was kind of
Kimberly came up with,
Yeah. It was like, okay, so was something happened on the way to certification,
Right. Yeah.
And it was kind of like, should you be teaching? Should you not be teaching? It was this whole kind of this different community of people that were like, okay, we're just here to practice.
I wasn't even sure I wanted to spend the whole $100 on it. I was like, that's a lot of money. Is it like $5,000 now? Did I hear that? $3,000? I've heard it's a lot of money.
I don't know. I could ask some people. Some I mentioned before. So three of our teachers, or 3 people from Miami, 2 of our teachers, and one member of our community all got the authorization this time. I think they were now there's levels. You can get level 1. You can upgrade to level 2. I don't think there's level 3. And then
Did you say level 1 with upgrades?
You can get upgraded to level 2.
Oh, you get but not between 1 and 2. There's not like a 1A, 1B.
But sometimes I think he does level 2 up to Dvipada or something.
Yes. So then you can complete exactly. Yeah. So you do that. And actually on the certification, now I don't know what the certification looks like, but the one that I got, there's a place. It's like India is very interesting, right? So then, like, to get the when I got the certification, there are all these interesting things that they asked me for, like my father's name. Yeah. So actually, on the certification, it says daughter of John MacGregor.
Yeah,
because that's my dad's name. Within India, they can. That's part of the whole. Like, it actually ties into some kind of really interesting and troubling things about India's past, because this can also, like, your father's name determines your caste.
Yeah,
and so that, but
that's your caste. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what my dad's name is on my certification, and there's supposed to be a place where it indicates class level. Right. And Lino Miele from Italy, he was there on the day I got my certification. First thing he did was like, "Let me see," and he's like super Italian. He's like, "I want to see the certification." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Oh, it looked like mine, except for one thing, you know." And I was like, "Oh," and he's like, "There's blank." And so apparently they had written in like the level that he was on, and for me they left some blank.
Interesting.
So Lino was done. He was cooked, and you were yet to be fully baked.
Yeah, you're still going.
You're still going.
He was
still room there.
This is good for you.
This is a good for you. Yeah. Bella. Bueno.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
I feel like another really interesting thing that shifted, and we were talking a little bit about this at the beginning, about how dedicated you are to your meditation practice and how it, really creates that mental stability. Because I remember when we met for the first time was in 2004, and it was at like Ken, I think, was having some kind of party on his on his house.
Yeah.
And we started talking like on his roof, and you were just leaving, and I had just kind of got there, and we'd both been in Srivara Manor for a little bit, and there was like, a lot of drama.
The palace.
And you were like, "Oh, I can't wait to sleep in. I can't be getting up at 1 a.m. in the morning." We had this whole conversation. And then the next time we met, I forget, it might have been 2005 or 6, and your personality was like, had kind of totally changed in a way. It was like so much more, I'm going to say peaceful.
Yeah.
But like, it was like really apparent, like that your energy had like really shifted. And we were talking again, and you were telling me about doing the Vipassana retreat, like after your first one, and how it like just changed everything for you, and it really shifted things. Can you tell us a little bit about like what that was like for you? How you feel like that path really kind of
shifted.
Mm-hmm.
Helped, like added to the Ashtanga practice.
I feel like without my sitting practice, I don't know if I'd still be practicing asanas today, to be honest with you. And I feel like I've been sitting for almost as long as I've been doing asanas. So I had a friend of mine who introduced me to traditional Buddhist studies. My grandfather was Buddhist, but he never taught me, I think I was too young to learn much about the teachings from him and before he passed away. But I have a really good friend who took monastic vows. His monk name is Tenzin Sengi. And we were part of kind of the same community in Miami. And he shared with me a lot of the teachings that he got from his Lama and some basics about meditation. So I was kind of like sitting without a lot of guidance. I asked Patabi Joyce if I could go and do the meditation retreat. And he said, sure, go ahead. And he actually said,
yes.
Yeah, and he said, I told him I was going to Nepal, and he was like, "Oh, maybe you'd not come back." And it's interesting because I do feel like I wasn't the same person after I left that retreat. Yeah. So I feel like it's true. I didn't come back. That being that I was, that being didn't come back. And I really felt like, so the way that course kind of changed my relationship with myself, my mind. It did open a path to more holism. It did open a path to bringing kind of the intelligence and wisdom of kind of what we could call the buddhi, that kind of higher consciousness, into kind of cohabitation with the realm of the body, which I didn't really have before Vipassana. I mean, I talked about my body as kind of like a blob that I didn't really know, and I was really excited when I was able to differentiate the top from the bottom. And then after Vipassana, it felt like there was this kind of meeting between the touch point of intellect and embodiment. And that's something that really meditation helped me find and ground. And I processed a lot of old traumas. I processed a lot of things that I didn't even know were still kind of present within me. And since that first course that I did in Nepal, after I think it probably was like 2002 was my first course, and then I kept sitting. So I did another course and another course. I probably sat now, I don't know, like 8 courses, and I want to do another one next year. And I feel like it's a really, for me, the sitting practice is like I sit twice a day, every day, but I don't do asanas every day, and certainly not twice a day. So I feel like it's interesting in terms of how we think about the trajectory of our sitting practice, our meditation practice. The introspective practices is like, that's a practice you can continue for the rest of your life, and it will get deeper and deeper and deeper, the results of which you will see in the interactions that you have in your life. But the asana practice, maybe you don't go on an upward trajectory, maybe there's a plateau, maybe there's a change in internal awareness. But if we're measuring sort of like asana perfection by external aesthetic standards, there's going to be a point where, yeah, okay, what you could do when you were 20, maybe you can still do, but differently, and maybe adaptive when you're 90, maybe we get off of the asana achievement train, which I think is a healthy thing to get off of, and understand what spiritual practice is, understand what are we cultivating within asana. So for me, the meditation practice has given me a depth, a place to kind of return home to, and has given me kind of a place to resolve many of the irresolutions within. And it's not like now it's perfect. I feel like, I go through some stuff, and then asana practice was wonderful for, grounding and keeping a root and this sort of thing. But in my sitting practice is again, like I said, it's where I find my sanity. And I feel like with that, I can immediately see the difference if I don't sit, just immediately, just that day itself. If for whatever reason I didn't sit, maybe there was a travel and like I arrive, then I feel there's a difference. Or if I feel like I'm going to give myself a holiday from sitting, and I'm like, yeah, maybe not actually, maybe have a holiday after sitting is better for you. And there's also so much interesting research about how long-term sitting changes the neurobiology of your brain. And so that's something that I feel is to have I have the lived experience of being a long-term sitting practitioner. And that's definitely, again, helped me just kind of soften the edges of asana as well, and remove any sense of identity achievement from asana, to understand, oh, well, asana really helps in meditation, I feel, because look, you're going to sit. If your body is tight and it's uncomfortable for you to sit on the floor, it can be really helpful for you to like stretch your hips and become a little intimate with your body through the vehicle of asana. It's really going to help you be more comfortable when you sit on the floor. If you've got a lot of back pain and you're hunched over, and your psoas is really weak and stiff, then you're gonna be in torture for a 1 hour sit. So please, like, take some asanas, do something. Don't just sit there in misery. And I think it's really, really helpful, this combination. At the same time, the sitting practice really gives you the place to actually have a sort of forum where non-attachment is real, and you can really practice letting go. So one of the things that I realized very quickly is that, look, in asana practice, we can injure ourselves, so we're constantly like, am I pushing too hard? I better back off. Or I should push a little more. Oh no. So we're constantly like navigating the space. Injuries are real. Like, people get injured, you can injure yourself. You can get injured by a teacher. Your teacher can injure a student. It's unfortunate, but it happens. So it also happens in life. You can walk into a door and get a concussion, like life is also dangerous. But in the sitting practice, I've had some really intense experience. Anybody who sits long-term will have similar experiences where there'll be pain, the kind of pain that you would experience in asana, but it doesn't lead to injury. It's really a temporary arising and passing of sensations. And if you were to experience that same pain in asana, you would immediately back away. But in sitting, you just sit and it dissipates. And then it's like this transformation that allows you to really get the experience. Oh, I am not my body. Oh, this body is a thing it's a gift I have. I'm inhabiting it, but I am not my body. And you can watch the thoughts in a way that we do in asana because we're doing something. The very fact of doing puts a layer between, you know, our thoughts and ourselves, and our bodies and ourselves. So in the sitting practice, it's like, that's the place where I've had these realizations, the experiential realizations. Oh, I'm not my body. Oh, I'm not my mind, but I'm this watching consciousness that observes mind and body. And then what is that? And this is where it's interesting, where, you know, like yoga and Buddhism have a conversation about what is the watching consciousness. So, you know, in the Buddha teachings, we'll say it's a Buddha nature. In the yoga teachings, we say it's Purusha. And it's like, well, we're saying the same thing with like different words. And then we can get into this whole kind of intellectual, heady conversation about, well, the Buddha says there's no Atman. And then yoga says there is the Atman, and it's the Purusha and the this. And I'm like, listen, just go and experience it. As soon as you realize you're not your body or not your mind, that feeling is what both of the disciplines are after, you know.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, we can try to put words for something that's ineffable, and this is where we get into trouble.
Yeah, I love that. It's the emptiness and the fullness, right? The shunyata, the emptiness, and then like the infinite, the ananta, the fullness. And it's just like this conversation, and the emptiness is infinite and the infinite is empty.
Absolutely.
It's like, you know, the same thing. And I love that you bring up like the being and the doing. And I feel like sometimes we get really stuck in the being in the asana practice, or sorry, stuck in the doing in the asana practice, where we're like, I got to do this. You know, it's like a lot of action in a way, and it's a lot of effort and willpower and like doing of something to get somewhere or something or some experience. But then the meditation is kind of like the antidote in a sense. It's like the balancing. It's just the being. And there's really nothing you can do. And the more you try to do something in it, like the less it works in a weird way.
Yeah.
So it's just it's beautiful, like complementary, I think, practices.
I encourage everybody who's been doing asanas for, you know, definitely more than 5 years, but I try to say, if you've been doing asanas for 2 years or more, start a sitting practice. And so one of the things, honestly, that the last 4 years has kind of freed me to do, I feel like, is include more of the softer teachings in my teachings. It was always like this big part of my personal sadhana that I never really felt comfortable sharing. But I found that during the pandemic, so many people were like, look, life is hard and full of misery. It takes so much discipline to get up and face this day, because, you know, we lived every day with so much uncertainty and so much doubt. And it was just so difficult. It was like every day was tapas. So that so many people fell off the sort of discipline of the Ashtanga practice. And I was like, we don't need more jump throughs right now. We don't need another jump through workshop. We need like a space to heal and a space to come into ourselves. So I started to really emphasize the softer side of my own personal practice, including in the teachings. And at some moment, I'm going to lead a silent retreat. At some moment, I'm going to do just asana and sitting and no talking. But I'm figuring out, right. So at some point, I have to find the right space for it, you know?
Yeah, I think
that's really interesting. I had a question in my mind, and it kind of segues really nicely into this. And forgive me, I don't want to, if you want to, I don't want to interrupt you, Harmony, but that comment that you just said reminds me so much of your mom, Kino. Your mother struck me as you're a little mini mom of your mother, and your mother had this kind of benevolent peace to her, maybe like a little anxious doing in the kitchen, like she was kind of needed to do this little anxious kitchen, you know, but like total like quiet silence to her. And maybe that's completely different when the guests are gone. I don't know. I don't want to, I'm just projecting maybe. But the question that I have, and the heart of it, is that I'm thinking of the three of us here, just looking at the video, and I just felt the sense of that the three of us were amalgams of our parents and whatever kind of cultural trajectory that they were on, and the habits and choices that they were making. And then as teenagers, the three of us just said, boom, we're going to make an intervention. We're going to intervene in this habit, and we're going to insert a yoga practice in this North American, and we're going to just see what happens for the next 30 years. And here we are sitting here. So I'm wondering about how you feel about that. Do you feel like you're that much different from your parents, and do you feel like you have made a big intervention?
No, it's a super good question. And I think that when we're looking at sort of what you're tapping into is, I'm sure like what we call in yoga samskaras, right? So these are these like behavioral patterns, and they're different ones. There's ones that like we do all by ourselves, don't come from our parents or come from anywhere else, but like we hatch those patterns all by ourselves, and there are unique ones. There's ones that come from our families that are kind of our immediate kind of genetic inheritance. And then there's the larger cultural ones that we kind of get from osmosis and a little bit from the atmosphere around us. And I feel like that's exactly what yoga is. We're working with all of that. Absolutely. And, I feel that there's so much of my mom and my dad that I find that I absolutely love and find inspirational. And there are definitely parts of their lives that I felt like I want to take a different path, and I have to say that I have the privilege to have had that choice because they worked so hard to allow me that space to have that choice. So the very decision that they made to allow me the choice to not make the decision that they made, if that makes sense, right?
Totally.
So, but both my parents are first generation immigrants, so my mom is, my mom is Japanese and born in the United States. My dad is Scottish. His parents immigrated from Scotland. He's born in the United States. My dad has passed away now, but he's the only one I think he has 7 total. So he's one of 7. He's the youngest and the only one to go to college. His parents died, but his mom died when he was 6 months old, and his father died when he was 5 years old. Wow. So he was the only one of his family to be adopted, and it was during the Great Depression, post World War II in the United States, where resources were spread really thinly. And, the fact that he sort of went to college, got a degree, and how he ended up in Miami, his parents immigrated to Ohio. His dad was a coal miner and a baker, died in a coal mining accident. Nobody explained to my father what happened until he was like almost 20. All he knew as a 5-year-old was that his dad went to work and never came home, but his dad died in a coal mining accident. But again, it's the Great Depression, and nobody told him, there was no social worker, there was no family, there was just the other kids, and that was it.
Sessions.
Yeah.
There was no therapy session. Oh my God. My dad didn't tell me about this until like it came up through some healing work and some like psychic development work that we were doing. And the only thing my dad ever said about Ohio was, that's a horrible place, let's never go there. Which is not.
Again, agree with everything in this conversation so far.
You know what I mean? So like, but it's just his memory of it. Anyhow, so like he like went through this really difficult time, went and got a degree, and to get for the degree, he enlisted in the ROTC and the armed services,
reserve officer training.
Exactly. And then he did the training and did his course of study. And then they said, well, where would you like to be stationed? And he and his buddy, they thought they were joking. And his buddy put down Honolulu and my dad put down Miami Beach. And they got their assignments and he was like, sweet. And he, went to Miami Beach and didn't go back to Ohio for like 25 years.
Wow.
You met your mom there.
He met my mom, and then they got together, and they were married for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years before they had me. So I feel like in some ways my dad is the one that, my mom likes to travel. My dad was always the one that kind of had this, desire to explore and see other places. My dad was always the one more quiet, more meditative, more emotional. My mom I have my work ethic from. Like my mom and I are super hard workers. We get everything done and we do it quietly and without much fuss. I have also from my mom, which I see which I have a little bit less of than she does, but we both have kind of like, sometimes it can happen like a snack temper. Like if it's just something like suddenly it can be like, what is that? And then my mom can curse at things sometimes. For example, like she's small and sometimes she can't reach a cup. So she's like, God damn that cup. And then she'll reach it and she'll like curse at it. Why do you put these cups so high? And I'm like, I don't know. Tim mounted the cabinet. Mom. Sorry. And I have that in me and I've worked on that. So I feel like there are all of these different factors. And honestly, I feel like there's some of this kind of genetic inheritance of samskaras. It took me until I'm like, 40 years old to process. Like I didn't even process that I'm a mixed race person until I'm 40 years old. Like I didn't even realize like, oh, I've been considered white the majority of my life, like just categorized with like all the white people. And then it's taken like a whole kind of like a rising in racial consciousness for me to realize, oh, I'm white passing like multiracial. I'm not.
You're white passing multiracial. Wow.
Yeah, which is a whole other sort of thing. So even sometimes like that's a whole other source of kind of identity and samskaras that come up. And I've worked with like I've done my own personal growth around that and talked with my mom about that and how that and her stories of what she talks about are just so much more devastating than anything I experienced. She's traveling with my mom and dad are traveling in Germany, and my dad is like, he's 100% Scottish. He looks Northern European. They're traveling in Germany. He studied German in school, so he's walking around like speaking German to people on their European vacation. And then a German woman walks up to my dad and says in German, "Shame on you for being with this, inadequate species. You're, destroying the DNA of our good German."
My gosh.
And then my mom was like, "What did she say?" And my dad she said, "You're really beautiful."
That's good.
Told her like man. When I came home later. So that's just like, like all of these different things. My mom was raised in segregation. So every time she went to the bathroom, she had to ask, "Where do you want me to go? White or colored?" Because she's like, technically I'm yellow. Do I go and color? Like where do I go? And so it's like this whole other world, but like she fought in that world to have 3 different careers and ultimately start her own business and create her own livelihood. And it's probably not the career that she would have dreamed of, but it's the one that she made work. So because she was able to make it work, and because my dad committed himself to also something that probably wasn't his dream, but it was good at like come from where he came from. He was a teacher and took early retirement, and I think retirement was probably his dream. So but with that foundation, they definitely had some ideas about what I should do with my life. But when I started doing yoga, I thought, wow, I'm going against everything that I thought, like that family samskara, like what you were talking about, Russell. I had these fears of like, I'm going against all of this, I'm not following that. I'm not, even though I have a business now, I'm not following that path. I'm not going to take over my mom's business. I'm not like my parents always thought maybe you should go and maybe go to law school. And I thought I was going to go to law school for a period of time. And I was just realizing it's not for me. Now I kind of wish I had gone to law school just for the education of it. There are some times where I would love to say I'm a lawyer, because I've been in situations where, and like the legal bills you get in situations where you need to hire a lawyer, if I just read that stupid stuff by myself, but but I had all this fear of like, well, I'm not following that path. So I did have this moment where I talked to my parents about it, and I was like, are you upset with me that I'm not going to be a lawyer, that I'm not going to have, a corporate job, and that I'm doing something else? And what both my parents said to me was, we've seen the impact that yoga's had on you, and we just want you to follow that path as much as we can. And we want to support you in that as much as we can. And so that felt really, really good. And then, and then I think, and my dad said to me at some moment, my dad is definitely someone who has influenced the way that I think and see things a lot. He said to me that he just sort of encouraged me to explore these different avenues of like being a lawyer, following some career path or whatnot, just because he didn't want me to struggle. And then he said, now that I see that you can create a life for yourself out of what you love, I couldn't have dreamed it better.
Right. It's a real immigrant ethic to come in and just make it work, and to want that for your children as well. Incredible. Yeah.
But I think for them, if they hadn't seen me happy doing yoga, I think they would have probably been like, well, let's encourage you to go back to law school or something like that. But the fact that the happiness, and then I tried to get them to practice, but they were like, my mom has promised me that she will sit a Vipassana. So I'm like, the pandemic is irritating for many reasons, but because we had one booked and we were both accepted and we were going to go. And then the pandemic, they canceled it. And I was like, man, when am I ever going to get her to commit again?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
I remember we talked on your podcast. I think maybe 2021, last year, I think, or the year before, at the end of 2020, when I was doing the workshop on Ohm stars. And you had just gotten back from, I think it was 2021, because you were at the Vipassana at the end of 2020 or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then I went and sat another 10-day course in November last year. And the whole time I was thinking of our conversation of you saying, oh, it was really nice because I had my own room and my own little cell area where I could do a little bit of practice. And I was like, I'm following Kino's advice, and like I have my own little personal space, a room,
had your own
a little
place.
I was like, this is perfect.
Exactly. It's so nice.
Yeah. But speaking of like getting stuff done and doing all the things and having like that drive, that, I don't know, passion and purpose fueling everything you do. I mean, how on earth do you do all the things that you do, my dear? You like invent a yoga TV channel, like Ohm Stars. You and Tim have the Miami Life Center, now Miami Yoga Garage is like a huge undertaking.
You have 6 books.
6 books, some kind of like crazy social media, online extravaganza.
You respond to your 1 million followers on Instagram personally every day. This is so nice.
Yeah. So how do you do it all? Come on, tell us your secrets.
I mean, I feel like I'm someone that has a lot of energy. Like I actually was just talking to someone this morning, like I don't drink coffee. First of all, I don't like the taste of it. Like it's just not for me. It never has been. But then the few times that I've been like, okay, I'm like, let's try to like, Tim loves coffee. Yeah. So then like I've been a couple of times like, all right, let's drink some coffee. And I get like heart palpitations and I like run around like a crazy person.
Too much for you. Yeah.
It's too much. It's a severe stimulant. Like I feel like I may as well have done a line of cocaine, it's sort of like cocaine without the ego. It's just like give you the energy, but not the paranoia, the ego part.
That sexy feeling, which is so nice.
Yeah, you don't get that with the coffee.
No.
That's only the cocaine. Yeah, we can leave all that. That's what I mean. No ego, just the energy. The heart palpitations. For me, it was the heart palpitations. I was like, oh, I know this from somewhere. Where do I know this? I didn't think this is for me. And then also the come down, and then I'm like shattered. It's like, what happened? Oh, I drank a cup of coffee. This is really not for me. So I have a lot of energy, and I'm like, well, I'm going to do something with it, and it may as well be a benefit, So I don't know. I feel like I'm good at switching off. But I'm also I'm also on for a lot of the time. Like I can totally switch off and do nothing, but doing nothing for me is really nothing. Like I don't really like to get sucked into movies and TV and this kind of thing. Like sometimes between Tim and I, Tim's like, let's watch something. I'm like, okay, we will watch one. Hold on. Are you back? Yes, we will watch one episode and that's it. I need to plug in.
Off you go.
You get a lot of hours on it. iPad, like me, it can go forever, but then when it's off, it's off. But I feel like I've always been someone that can manage my time. So for me, I feel like strangely, the public aspect of teaching and interacting with people that has requires a certain type of energy. And then the way for me to recharge from that certain type of energy would be to do something without any interaction. So that can involve writing. That can involve even making a video for me, because if I make a video, sometimes I'll do it completely myself. Sometimes I'll have my team, but then there's not that kind of interaction. If I'm doing a live class, it's different. But then there are these things where, okay, I'm working on this and then I'm in my own energy, I'm in my own flow. And whether sometimes it's going for a walk, I love to be out in the nature, and this helps me recharge. My sitting practice gives me the sort of mental space and clarity to focus on some things. And I think maybe the most important thing is that very much like in my asana practice, if I don't feel it, I don't push. So if I feel like, this project is not really happening. Yeah, I'm not really feeling inspired by it. Yeah, I'm not doing it. And that's taken me a long time to come to, because when I first started, I would just, out of, I think, a place of insecurity, say yes to everything. Yeah, sure, I'll go teach that. Absolutely, I'll do that too. Yeah, I'll take that on also. Sure, I'll write that blog for you. Yeah, okay, let's do that too. And then someone was like, I can do this all, but do I really need to? So now I'm like, wait a minute, where am I feeling the pull? And if I don't feel the pull, let me wait and wait till I feel, yeah, let's do that. Like, what's inspiring about that? Okay, I'm going to do that. Like, I'm sure you do too, get so many requests of people that are like, I've invented blah, blah, blah. I want to come on your podcast. I've invented this. And I'm like, thanks, but not right now.
But it's also just like designs on her time. Like, people want her time every day, all day long. Nobody wants my time necessarily, but people really want Harmony's time. And that's like, watching it is like, oh, geez, say
maybe
no.
You should take on the role of assistant, and then you could take on some of those meetings.
She would love having me as an assistant, I can tell you.
Nothing would get done.
Well, I like to say no to things.
That's good. I feel like I have, and so part of what allows me to do so much is I do have a good team of people around me that do say no to things, because I have a lot of ideas, and so some of them will say like, we don't have the capacity to do that, and then sometimes I'll take on too much, and so then to have a good team of people that say, this is what we have the resources for, this is what we have the resources for, and then accept that. And then there are some things that are like, okay, well, like there are some things that I do by myself that I don't need additional resources for. And then that's fine. Like, so I'm working on a new book right now. And the new book is about accessibility in Ashtanga. So it'll be something totally different. So many people have been writing to me like, write a 3rd series book. And I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Like, maybe learn that from a teacher. Like, I don't want to see somebody with a copy of my book trying to do like Durvashasana and then explode their knee.
Blow their knee, blow their hip, blow their back.
How about not, or like what? Like, I'm going to give instructions for Gandhi Varandasana in a book. Like maybe not.
It's not so helpful.
Get the DVD. You have a DVD for it.
But not even that. Like, I feel like go and learn from a teacher. Like at this point, like that when you get to that stage, like I think it's so. I actually went completely in the other direction of accessibility. So the accessibility book that I'm working on will have a floor variation and a chair variation of every asana. From sun salutations through the end of closing, including primary and second. Because there are some asanas in second that can be adapted very, very well for a chair practice and can be very healing and therapeutic for people that aren't able to get up and down from the floor. And I just feel like, why does Ashtanga have to be, a sort of, elitist. A kind of, like almost like a competition of the flexible and the strong. And it's like, no, that's not what the practice is. The practice is something else. So, but if there's no tools for that, if people don't see, I could adapt the practice to a chair. If people don't see that, then they'll think it's not possible. Right. So I really, I feel like that question of accessibility is something that I think our lineage desperately needs. So I've devoted a lot of resources to that, taking pictures, brought in different diverse body types to be the students and the images, and going through all of that. And of course, when we ask the question of accessibility, we have to ask the question of equity in our lineage, and it brings up all of the questions of intersectional justice, and to ask those questions of, well, why has it taken us so long to welcome adaptations of the asanas, and why what about our lineage has put kind of put this equivalence between strength, like fit, flexible bodies with spiritual sort of advancement, and how can we rehabilitate that,
Exactly, because that's the achievement focus, right? So if someone has achieved 3rd series, then they must be spiritually advanced, and that's a dangerous place to situate ourselves.
Oh, absolutely, because then it's like, well, we may then all the contortionists are enlightened beings, So totally. And the contortionists are amazing. They've devoted their lives to that, and the same thing with like hand balancers. And I've studied with them. I've taken classes with them. I think it's really inspiring, because they don't have any of like the dogmas around like, put the hand here, don't put the hand there. They're just like, the feet should only be like this and whatever. They're just like, you want to take the feet wide? Let's take the feet wide. And it's like,
I was gonna ask you about your last book, the Act of Love. Do you still want to talk about that? Would you rather talk about your new book?
Yeah,
I'd like to talk about both of them.
It seems like it also is again about the tagline, radically reprogram your mind, is so much again about this transformational journey that seems to be, like I said, the through line through your life, or my experience of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, I feel like one of the things that we don't realize is that we have, seeds for every action and every thought that we take. And we think this sort of seed or root of one behavior, one action is one thing, but in actuality, that seed or root is something else. And so if we want to kind of change the way we be in the world, we need to address not only our conscious intentions around things, but our subconscious intentions around things. So one of the things that I've done in my recent book, Act of Love, is to take a teaching that kind of came to me in a meditation retreat and really dive into it from the paradigm of sort of retraining and repatterning our thoughts, and then taking that rubric and applying it to different aspects and paradigms within everyone's life. So the first thing to understand is that the conscious mind is only about 5% of our total cognitive thinking and our cognitive power. The subconscious mind is about 95% of our cognitive power. And it's the root in the subconscious mind that really ends up determining the course of our life, right? So one of the things that came up for me after a period of another period of really intense struggle after my father passed away, and another really intense legal battle happened, and a whole other host of things that happened that really just kind of brought me to a really, really down place. I sort of had to realize that, the seed of my behavior wasn't really pure. I was narcissistic in that moment. I was egoic in that moment. I was deluded in that moment. So then there was this kind of teaching that came to me during a meditation retreat, which seems really simple, which is let everything you do be an act of love. Everything. So I was like, okay, well, in order to do that, I need to understand, number one, how a thought can impact the mind. And so this is where contemporary neuroscience comes in, and we understand neuroplasticity, that the more you think a thought, the easier it is for you to think that type of thought, and that types of thoughts group together and create hardwired patterns in the biology of our brain. So then if you can slowly start to think different thoughts and take different actions that reinforce those different thoughts, then you can actually create new neural pathways in the brain. So this is one thing that was really inspiring to me about, it's not just once that we need to do something, but it's really everything, a consistent effort, a disciplined effort to retrain, which is kind of like what we do in asana, okay, my arm does this and I don't want it to do that. I can't just do it once in a new way. I need to do it every single time in a new way if I want to change the behavior. Well, great, that's for the arm, but how do we do that for our brain? How do we do that for our thoughts? So that's kind of what I worked on. And then to address what is action. And of course, to bring in the teachings of yoga and the teachings of karma and the teachings of the Gita about what does it mean to act, and where our intentionality comes in action, and what is love, right? So love is one of the most popular phrases, that gets used from everything from loving pizza to spiritual bypassing to understanding our intimate relations. So we've really kind of dissected what that can mean, and then apply, what does it mean to act in love in relationship? What does it mean to act in love in terms of how you see and view your own body? What does it mean to act in love when you run a business and have to operate in kind of the capitalist sphere? What does it mean to act in love in terms of a relationship with the divine and a relationship with God? What does that mean? And so to really kind of question and consider it. And I've drawn upon many examples from teaching and many examples from my own life to help the teachings become relatable. And each chapter ends kind of with a takeaway exercise and a way to apply some of the teachings. And it was really difficult to write this book because my first book that was not about yoga, asana practice. And I feel really kind of almost a little bit shy and excited to release something like this. And I hope it opens up the door for more books like this, because I do have at least 2 other ideas for books that are non-asana related, and have those kind of sketched out in an outline. But now I'm working on an asana book because I feel like it's important for the lineage. And then after I complete this project, I'm going to pivot back to one of the other ideas that I have about creating a teaching that's rooted in the spiritual path, but is not, an asana instruction manual. I mean, at some moment there's enough instruction out there about how to do forward bend.
Totally.
You should,
I couldn't agree more, my love.
if you have a book coming out on how to get your books published, I would really like to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the biggest advice for anyone who wants to get a book published is like write it first, because you cannot go with an idea to a publisher. You need to completely write it, and you need to have a plan for how it's going to sell, because publishing is a really difficult industry these days. Yeah. So if a publisher is going to take a bet on you, that they need to see the product, and they need to see how you're going to actually get that product into the hands of readers. And if you still really, really believe in yourself and you don't make it into a publisher, there are a lot of intermediaries available now that are like halfway between a traditional publisher and self-publishing, that if you have the financial resources, you can pay for, and then when the sort of book sells, you'll get that investment back. Or you could do a GoFundMe if you really believe in it and pre-sell the books, and that works as well. But the most important thing is to have the thing written. Have the thing written. If you don't have it written and you're not, Barack Obama, it's going to be very difficult to get a
ghostwriter to write it for you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that is very generous advice.
Yeah, that's great. But I want to know, do you like to write this is always my thing, the morning times, like this incredible time, and like my brain's so fresh, and I love to like do creative work in the morning, but then it's also like the time for the meditation and the time for the asana and the time for there's just like so many things to do in the morning that it feels like impossible to fit it all in. So when do you like to write? I mean, because you obviously have a habit and a practice of writing regularly, to write 6 books, 7 books on the way.
Yeah. So I think I do one of two things. If I know I'm taking a deep dive into writing a manuscript, then I do actually use the morning time, and I just adjust everything. So I will get up before Tim gets up, and I will spend a minimum 1 hour, brush my teeth, drink a cup of tea, immediately write. And I write for like an hour, maybe 2 hours. And then I just adjust everything after that. And so I'll know that like, okay, now I'm writing and this is my time to write. So then I sit after that, and then I do my asana practice. I get a little hungry when I do that. So then maybe I have extra cups of tea with extra honey in it. I really love honey. I'm vegan, but I do eat honey. And that's a whole other conversation. But I mean, like agriculture.
They like making that honey.
But it's a whole question of agriculture. In order to support agriculture, without bees, we have no agriculture. So if you eat almonds, if you eat raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, most fruits, you rely on some sort of bee farming in order to pollinate. So natural bees will never work on the scale of agricultural production. So we want to support somehow a sustainable bee farming where the bees are not fed sugar, but the bees are actually part of are integrated in a biodynamic way to our agriculture system. And if we don't support those bee farmers and buy their honey, they have no income, so they can't actually do that. And without those bee farmers, you don't even have alfalfa sprouts without bees.
Wow.
So it's like, if you don't want to eat the honey, you need to pay the bee farmers somehow. But somehow bees are an integral part in our agriculture system. So it's one of these questions of, don't eat the honey out of like sugar packets. That's not feeding the bees sugar. That's terrible. But sustainable bee farming that keeps the planet, pollinating, that's something I'm a big fan of that. So in the mornings, I will take some of that sustainable small batch, unheated, raw honey and put it in a lot of tea, especially when I'm writing, because like I don't want to eat a meal before I do my practice, but like I will definitely have very sweet tea multiple times while I'm writing, and then I'll sit. And then the hardest thing about that is when I'm finished writing, I'm tired.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Hence the sweet tea. So I'm like, all right, time for some sweet tea. And then the second hardest thing about that is if I don't start my sitting practice before Tim wakes up, then I have Tim, who's more talkative than you would expect from a Scandinavian.
Everybody loves Tim.
He's wonderful, but he is talkative. Yeah. So then, he starts talking and I'm like, I'm going to go sit now. And so I try to somehow wake up, and I wake up much earlier than he does. So I just wake up and I try to, okay, now I'm writing. And that's what I'll do when I'm deep into a manuscript. But then I'll have a second time in the day when I come back to the manuscript. And it's usually after practice, after lunch or brunch or whatever, depending on how late the practice goes. And then I'll come back to the manuscript a second time in the day, not in the evening, because if I get too stimulated in the evening, I can't sleep. So I'll come back to it. And it's always hard for me to get started in the afternoon. But if I just get started and I just take it as a discipline, now I have an hour, whatever comes out, it works. Here, I'm not able to write in the morning because I don't have any morning.
No, it's the middle of the night. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I'm doing kind of like an afternoon practice where it's like around between 2 and 4. I'm doing some writing, some like 2 to 4 writing-ish, and then coconuts. So
nice.
Oh, that's amazing. I love hearing that. It's so cool to just hear like how you like set up your day, and like, you know, because I think it's really important. It's to be flexible with when you're practicing and your morning routine, and like especially when you have important projects that you're working on, sometimes you do need to shift things around and like find what's going to work for you.
I just want to say that I'm really in the mood for like a Mysore Mailare, and I wonder if we could go, if we could, like the four of us, if we could go now and go to Mailare and go get a dosa. Can you ask Tim if he wants to come? Because I would love to go. Why don't we all?
I've been thinking about Mailare too, actually. First of all, here in Mysore, this trip, there's so many like Western kind of style things. There's like a French cafe people go to and they get croissants.
Oh, right.
And there's like a boulangerie and a patisserie, and I'm like driving by.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Amazing.
And Tim and I are like, and there's a new idli place that's really good. But the first thing we did when we got here was go to Idli Man. And then Idli Man now produces also small fried like fritters that if you don't want, you have to say no to, but you just get them. And we were just like, what's that?
Okay, I'll take a fried fritter. I don't mind.
A little
like a vada? Idli vada?
No, it's like a flat pakora. So it looks kind of like a fried mini veggie burger. And it's not bad. It's kind of tasty. I don't think it's so healthy.
Cutlet. Is it cutlet? One cutlet. Cutlet.
Like one
cutlet coming?
But it's not on the menu and you don't ask for it.
That's so
funny.
Yeah. I would like 2 cutlets.
Yeah, you're like, okay. Yeah.
That was always Jediah's favorite, the Italy man and his idlis and his vadas. He loves them.
Dasa Prakash is non-existent anymore. So Dasa Prakash.
What about Paradise? Dasa Prakash Paradise?
It does, actually. We were supposed to go today, but we cannot. Something else came up, so we cannot. We were going to go today.
Coffee ice cream.
We're going to go tomorrow.
Coffee ice cream is my favorite at the Dasa Prakash Paradise.
She doesn't have ice cream though. She's vegan now.
Really? I'm vegan. We can, we can have a cold coffee ice cream and still be vegan.
Coffee, maybe not for me ever.
No,
yeah.
Also, ice cream. I've never been a big ice cream fan either.
You know, it's quite cold.
Yeah, the ice cream is freezing. Yeah, it's cold. I don't know. I don't think it's for me.
But do you drink the green tea or the black tea?
I like both green tea and black tea.
Yeah.
It's the same bush.
I know. I was just curious.
I like both. Yeah,
it's the same bush. One is fermented. It's the same.
Yeah,
green or
like
black.
chai.
I like them both.
You
do you have chai green, when you're in India?
Green or red?
Yeah, I haven't had chai in a long time because honestly, like I have been almost vegan since I started practicing, and then I would come to India, and it's 20 years ago, it was impossible to be vegan in India.
Yeah, for sure.
You couldn't eat any food because everything had ghee in it, and you're just like, oh well, now I can't even have a chapati because it has ghee in it.
Now I'm like, well, vegan plus ghee. Yeah.
And so I would come to India and be like, well, let me drink the chai because there's no other option. There was no soy milk. You couldn't get non-dairy milk anywhere. When I first came to the old Shala and Lakshmipur, and be like, okay. But at home, I was basically vegan. Like I wasn't drinking milk. I wouldn't have any dairy. But then in India, and then it was weird because every time I come to India, I would just be like, oh, I'll just drink the chai. It's a different ethics system over here, but I was always getting like sinus infection. And then, like 10
because you're lactose intolerant. And
then like 10 years ago, I was like, you know what? Like, it's really cool to sit on the steps and like hang out and drink like Amrit's chai. But what if I just don't? and then let me see if I get a sinus infection. Or if I just sit there and hang out and Tim drinks the chai and I feel a little sad. And I tried one time to drink like the non-milky tea. That was
tastes terrible. I've
water,
tried that too.
Yeah, water is a wonderful option.
Can't drink the water though.
And then like, you know, knock on wood, but I haven't had this like debilitating sinus infections when I've come here. There are actually now, again, a lot of places like Depth and Green and Santosha and like kind of like the places that the yoga students go to, they'll have a vegan chai. Unfortunately, if you're vegan in India, you can't go to a lot of the local places. Like you walk in, and you're like, do you have any non-dairy milk? And they're like, yeah, no problem. Then they just give you the regular milk. And then they're like, yeah, dairy milk, no problem. And you're like, I said, it's vegan milk. But there are in some of the biggers, like in Bangalore, there starts to be like a vegan community that's growing. And like even within the local community, it's starting to come.
Yeah, we interviewed a vegan from Nepal, Babita Shrestha, who wrote a vegan Nepalese cookbook. It was wonderful. I made her momos, but it didn't.
From the cookbook.
From the cookbook, yeah.
They didn't go very well.
They became
we didn't have
cutlets.
Flour. They became cutlets.
No. They did. They became flat pakora cutlets.
There's actually a momo place that's opened and a noodle place that's opened here, so that's cool, you know. And then that
the momos.
You took me to some momo place over on the east side of town.
Yeah, it was like the Chinese shop. I think
Chinese shop.
There starts to be more like Chinese restaurants and you know, other Asian restaurants, and so then there starts to be other options like noodles and things that are not necessarily, you know, made with ghee and whatnot. But I mean, idlis are amazing, and if you can get like a plain dosa or set dosa, it's really amazing. Just go to Mailari and say no butter.
Who says no butter? Pack the butter on.
Yeah, no butter.
Do you find it hard to be vegan when you're traveling, or is it pretty easy?
I feel it's easier and easier and easier, you know, easier and easier and easier. Like before, like, you know, like 10 years ago, difficult. And I've never been outside of India. I've never been a milk drinker. So, or a dairy person. So for me, I think when I met Tim, I took a small, like, road into experiencing his culture, which is, you know, it's like
some cheese and dairy.
Yeah, still like no milk, but like he the other day he had like he drank a glass of milk, and I was like, who does that? You know what I mean? But you know, Pattabhi Jois used to say 1 kg of milk every day. Then you know, backbending no problem.
Backbending no problem.
We were just talking about that.
We were.
Get that in, but I think it's easier and easier, and so I feel like consciousness starts to shift, and there are so many people like that are interested in eating less meat, at least for the benefit of the planet, and consuming less dairy for the benefit of the planet. So I feel like when it starts to be kind of like a more broadly accepted part of an ethical decision that we might make for the long-term health of our planet and ultimately our species, then more and more people are kind of getting on that bandwagon, and maybe they're not vegan, but they are super happy to have like a couple of vegan days each week. In the US, like Kevin Hart, the comedian Kevin Hart, he just opened like a vegan restaurant in LA that's like a burger place. And so like it's interesting that I feel like they're within the vegan community. I feel like there's like a vegan health conscious, you know, train, and that's the train that was actually slower to take off. And then there's a vegan environmentally conscious train, which is kind of like, I'm vegan for the planet, but I want to eat whatever I want to eat.
Yeah, that's going to be popular. Yeah,
and I feel like that, and I'm all for that. I mean, I don't always like. I'm for a really good veggie burger and some good fries, but not every day, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge vegan cheese fan, but I feel like it's very strange to me. You know, like weird looking, but occasionally here and there, why not? I mean, I'm a big fan of like fruits especially. If I could live, if there was a way I could live off of fruits and nuts, I would. But I mean, I think that you have to add in some vegetables and some grains for health purposes.
Little soy once in a while.
Yeah, you know, a little chapati.
Some beans every once in a while.
Once in a while. you know, not before a flight.
No.
They have an air conditioning system.
It's interesting. I was curious, like with your master's degree, looking at like feminism and the planet and agriculture, and I was wondering if that at all tied in with like your choice to like be vegan, or how you would see that, like a changing relationship with sort of, you know, the feminist movement and how we're relating to the world and the earth and like our food choices.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, if you start looking into the sort of diction and syntax that's used around food production, then the choices that you want to make to support different food practices and support different kind of, you know, ways of thinking about our relationship between our bodies and the planet, and our you know, our industrialization of agriculture and how that impacts the planet. It's a huge part of it. I mean, this is, like I said, I haven't been drinking milk since really ever. I mean, I think my parents probably fed it to me when I was a kid, but I mean, I remember buying soy milk when I'm 16 years old, and having, it's also being, you know, part Japanese, then I think that's part of the culture. And also having tofu, and my dad really being like, oh, you really are like your grandfather. And you know, and then as soon as even before I started doing yoga, I was interested in the environment and interested in like sort of understanding how the impact of our actions have on the environment. So like one of the first statistics is, you know, how particularly you know, beef and the production of the large scale kind of industrialization of cows for meat has on the planet. That was something I read when I was very young, and my parents were, you know, they'd adopted like, you know, the classic kind of American diet, and so they were like, they treated steak as something of a sign that they've made it. So then, you know, and at some moment I think I'm like maybe 14, and I think I read Al Gore's book or something like this, An Inconvenient Truth, and then read some other research on this, and then I just told my parents, I'm not eating beef of any type anymore. It's over. Like, we're not doing that for me, but please eat your steaks. And you know, and that's where my dad's like, oh, great, so tofu now, you know. And,
I think all of our parents did that.
Yeah. I think, but yeah. So I mean, I think that's a big part of it, is once you start to get conscious. And so it's this journey of consciousness. If you're unconscious about where things come from, whatever, you know, it's kind of like whatever. But then as soon as you apply the rubric of consciousness, it's kind of like back to that notion of like the body is a blob. So you don't know your body. Of course you treat it like crap, you know, you're not in your body. You don't feel your body. It's just this blob that goes around, and maybe it produces some pain, and you try to whack the blob to make the pain go away. And, you know, and like put some tablets in to make it shut up and whatever. And then if that's your relationship with food, then okay, like this food arrives, oh, it's tasty, give me more. And you don't put the lens of consciousness. You don't think about how nutritious is it? Where did it come from? Work the whole angle of, well, who made this? Someone made this, and this is a loaf of bread, and someone baked this, and there was wheat. There was someone that harvested the wheat, and then the wheat was grown in a country that had, you know, that had soil, and the soil received nourishment from generations of various plants that have grown there, and various animals that have also, you know, human beings and non-human beings that have died and been put back into the earth, and then the cycle continues. You think about it, like, wow, oh my goodness, this garment that I'm wearing, where did this come from? What fabric is it from? Oh, it's recycled polyester. That means that at some moment there's a fiber that came from petroleum or oil that was made into a product that someone discarded, and then we reclaimed that and turned it into this other fabric that then, you know, used, you know, this means of production to create this thing I'm wearing, or cotton, or organic cotton, or some, you know. And so particularly like fashion, I think, is something problematic if we think about it, especially like fast fashion. So we just talked to someone that was like, I just went to H&M and I bought like all this stuff, and I was like, okay, but why? You know, like, did you need it, or was it just fun to buy cheap stuff? You know, and so it's like, well, if you needed it, great. Like, so the person I talked to actually was like, I forgot to pack everything, so she actually needed clothes, so it was wonderful. But then it's this question of, you know, think about less than 100 years ago, you know, objects were manufactured in a different way. You know, if you think about like not our parents' generation, not even our grandparents' generation, but our great-great-great-grandparents, the way they treated objects radically different than the way we treat objects. Like we have this sort of like disposable society where we get something, throw it out. You get something, like throw it out. You get something, throw it out. You know, get another one. Take two. Why not? You know, and like if you think about our great grandparents, it was like they had a pair of shoes and they kept fixing it. Oh, they had they had a
you
sweater.
had cobblers for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a dying institution.
And they would sweater, and then they would darn the sweater. They fix it, you know. And like now, like we get a swing, like throw, like we gotta get the next color of the new season, and it's like, wait a minute, do we need fast fashion, or do we need something that's like, this is a really good product, and this thing will last you for it has to last at least 10 years. Like it can't just last a season, you know, or you're going to have something that could last you for your lifetime. And what's the relationship with that? Even the way we build structures, you know, particularly I see it like Miami drives me crazy sometimes. Like we just blow things up. Like when I'm drive by a building, like, oh, they're blowing that up. Why are they blowing that up? Oh, we're going to put something new. In 20 years, we're going to blow that up. I'm like, can we not blow things up, please? Can we just like, that's a house. Like, can we just like live in it? You know, and like maybe like paint it and renovate it and blow it up and build something else. It's just like, we have this disposability, which I think is unsustainable long-term. Consciousness, again, we apply that rubric of consciousness, and it's like, well, no, the planet isn't a blob, it's a living organism. And, you know, it's an interchange that we have with it. And we're not blobs either, we're living organisms. And so there's like this interchange that we need to have. And if that's not the journey of, you know, yoga and awakening, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Like that self-realization that we're actually interconnected and interdependent and not just individuals living individual lives that have no impact or influence on anything else going around.
In apartments.
That's an interesting, It's an interesting dissection of that word, you know?
I was living in a cooperative in Chicago the first time I heard that expression. I was like, wow, I'm not living in an apartment right now. I'm living in a commune. Yeah, I'm living in a community. It's very different.
And it's only I think it's North America that calls apartments.
Yeah.
And then
flats.
Flats. A flat. But it might be like a multi-level flat. So then is it really flat?
Yeah.
It's not really flat.
No. Well, my dear. Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
A lot of her energy. She needs to now ground herself.
She has to go eat a dosa or in Italy or something delicious now that we've been talking about breakfast foods.
Yeah, seriously. I had first breakfast before I had my after practice nap, and then I'm gonna take other breakfast because like this time, like lunch not available. So second breakfast.
And then a little, maybe a green drink, and then to bed at 4 p.m. for you because you got a early morning.
Or a late night, whichever way you see it.
Exactly. 1:30 a.m. comes pretty quickly.
I've been like counting, and at the same, it's weird, like at the same time I'm like, wow, I can't wait for the day off, but then it's like, I only have 2 more weeks left. And then I'm like,
right.
It's like weird, it's like, I can't wait to sleep in. Oh gosh, but I only have it's this weird
right in the middle of the trip you feel that always. It's half over.
What have I done? I've lied around.
What have I done?
What have I done?
You've been resting, you've been regenerating. Exactly. So that you can do all the things that you have to do this coming year.
People ask you that all the time. What do you do all day? And I'm like, I lie around. I'm not sure. Try to recover. Rest. Practice is so difficult, and we come home and sleep because we're sleep deprived, and then we try to feed yourself. It's like a mission, and you got to go lie down again.
Exactly.
It's boot camp. This is what it is. It's boot camp, and so you need rest.
Tim said something funny. He said he's like we can't sleep at night, and then we stagger through the day.
It's true. Yeah, you got the dog orchestra out there barking all night, keeping you awake. Well, we miss it. I miss India for sure.
The new shala has been really nice to practice there, so we'll definitely come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. I'll come
Awesome.
back when my son's growing.
He's taller than you. Now's the time.
Yeah. A few more years. Got to
All
pay for all his activities, you know.
Well,
But you all could come down to Miami. Shortage
Yes.
will be in Miami. Is that we're
Oh,
not we're doing
nice.
not official, we're not officially announcing, but he will
Okay.
be there.
Okay.
Okay.
Unofficially, he's
So
coming
stay tuned.
next
2023?
year at some point.
23
Yeah,
possible?
next year.
Okay.
Yeah, next
Okay.
year. So stay
23
tuned.
possible. Very good. Please
Beautiful. Dropping
extend.
that little goodie for people to like keep
Yep.
their eyes and ears
Stay
open.
tuned.
Please give little Timmy a cuddle from me, please.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. It was
Thank
so,
you.
so wonderful to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time and energy, love.
Thank you too.
Grateful.
Thank you.
We'll throw
Grateful.
all your links in the show notes, but I guess if people are listening and they don't know where to reach you,
Yeah.
which I think is quite funny, where can they find you, Kino?
Everybody can find me at Kino Yoga on Instagram, YouTube, and my website, and omstars.com for practice.
Look for
Beautiful.
a new book from Kino coming soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.